Thank you for tuning in to the Teacher Dudes. Whether you're listening as a podcast or joining us live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, this is a podcast created by teachers for teachers that's full of some random thoughts, ed tech, tips, and tricks, and a general focus on education today. Sit back, relax, and enjoy as your hosts Tyler Keefe and Jeff Anderson take it away. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Keefe, and I am one of the Teacher Dudes. Jeff is on his way. He was actually doing some tutoring tonight, so when he gets here, we'll be able to pull him in. But this is a very special episode as we are doing another live stream of the Idaho Education Chat. And with that, really quick, I'm going to take a second to introduce myself. I am Tyler Keefe. I am a technology integration coach from Nampa, Idaho. I have been doing this Teacher Dude podcast for about 3 weeks now, it seems, and, having a blast with that. For tonight, we are doing the Idaho Ed Chat over on Twitter, so you can follow that at following the hashtag, hashtag ID Ed Chat, and there will be some questions posted by Janet Avery. And so I'm actually going to bring Janet on here right now. Janet, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Tyler. Thanks for having us again tonight. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're excited too, and we're glad to have you. It's always fun. I get to have my typing hands rest for a little bit, so that is also good because spelling at this time of the night after a long day of meetings, it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. But we're having fun. And it is my understanding, well, obviously, because we set this up, but we have a special guest with us tonight. So why don't you take a second and first introduce yourself, what you do, and all that fun stuff, and then introduce our very special guest.
Sure. So I'm Janet Avery. I'm the curriculum director in Jerome School District, and I'm the moderator of Idaho Ed Chat, which is a weekly chat on Twitter. And tonight, it is my real privilege to introduce Marita Diffenbaugh, who's also been a member of Idaho Ed Chat just about as long as it's been in existence. But we are so excited because she has recently published a book called L.E.A.R.N.E.R. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and bring Marita in here. Marita, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Janet. And thank you, Tyler, for having me here at Teacher Dudes. It's a privilege to be here to talk about L.E.A.R.N.E.R and to collaborate on Idaho Ed Chat tonight.
Yes, no, we're really excited. I've taken a look at the questions that we're going to be asking and discussing tonight, and it's something, I know the acronym of your book is L.E.A.R.N.E.R, but, in this case right now, and I think you might allude to this later, is we're really going to be the learners from you and from each other in our virtual PLN.
That's awesome. Yes, as Janet mentioned, Idaho Ed Chat has been a part of my life through a variety of roles and through many years. And I'm just super excited to be, officially kicking off L.E.A.R.N.E.R with my family, with my teaching family. Thank you.
No, that is awesome. So as we get the first question is getting queued up in TweetDeck, if I remember if that's what Janet is still using. We're going to take a look over at the chat going on right now, as we will do a few times here. And it has updated here. We have Kevin, who is coming to us from Indianapolis over on the other side of the country. There's Janet again. And so far, we have Ty Salisbury, who's saying it's going to be a great chat tonight, and I agree. And that is all we have so far, but I'm sure there's some other lurking. So if you are watching this as we go right now, feel free to leave a comment in here. We'll get you on the screen as well, and you can interact with us virtually, again, through Twitter or by leaving a comment here on the live streams. So, Marita, before we get started on the first question, I do have one for you outside of the Twitter world, but you're not only a new author, but also you're kind of relocating in the process. So, can you give us
Yes.
a quick little?
Oh, absolutely. So, a short story of where I'm at now. I have 21 years in education in Idaho, from the classroom to the district to the state department. And through all of that experience, I have met people globally, connected with amazing authors, amazing educators around the globe. Jimmy Cassis and Jeff Zuhl are two that I read their book, What Connected Educators Do Differently. They wrote that with Todd Whitaker. And I shared that with principals years ago, way back when we were figuring out way before Twitter chats, before we were figuring out why should we actually bring technology into the classroom. So I was inspired by them, and we did a Google Hangout back when it was that. And so as I was in the process of changing to a new journey of getting an opportunity to start a school in North Idaho for 6th through 12th grade students, a career technical school for students who are not currently finding success in school, I ended up getting a call from Jimmy Cassis, actually a Twitter message from Jimmy Cassis. And that one thing led to another. And Connect Ed Publishing asked me to write my stories after sharing kind of lessons learned. And so I wrote this book to really bring hope for any educator, no matter what role they're in. It could be a parent, because parents are definitely educators. It could be a paraprofessional, a principal, superintendent, a teacher, anyone who's interested in supporting learners. And I just try to unpack the learning I've had and put it in a way that we could try to sort all the things that we are having in front of us, especially now. Little did I know we would be in the middle of a pandemic when I wrote the book or when it launched. And so I think even now more than ever, hope is something that we need to pay attention to. And I'm really thinking this will lift people up.
Amen to that. I think we're good for the night. We can just call it in right there. No, I think that's so true, and we'll talk about that throughout the night. And it's hope. We have hope. We're finally. I pray that we've turned the corner on this whole COVID thing, as case counts are dropping everywhere, and just hoping that we can get back to what we would call normal, even though who knows what that's actually gonna look like. And with that, we have our first question of the night that just posted. It is right here. So question 1, it says, listen, where is your attention? So again, listen, where is your attention? And I see here on the chat, Janet, your answer, you said, so many times my attention is on the quote, what am I teaching, rather than the quote, who am I teaching? I need to be intentional about listening and learning about those I am teaching. For me, that is the adults who are teaching the students. So can you kind of take a second to give us a quick explanation of where that's coming from there?
Yeah, so when we really listen, and I a few years ago, I had the privilege of getting to listen to Russ Qualia and then Lisa Landy, and he talked a lot about student voice and bringing in and really understanding and listening to what our students need. We get so focused on what it is we're teaching that sometimes we forget to listen to what our students are saying to us about what they're learning. And if we take that time to listen, then we really then can meet their needs and actually help them make the connections that they need to make. But sometimes in the day-to-day, and I even think this year especially, we're so focused on how am I going to get this information to my students? How am I going to, get them there, rather than, and sometimes they will tell us how we need to get them there.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll tell us where to put that learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, no, I definitely agree with you on that one. And for me, I go back to a story that resonates with me to this day from one of my first couple years teaching, where a kid has his head down, literally banging his head on the desk, and I'm trying to figure out why. And it took me for a while to be able to walk over and say, Billy, what's going on, dude? And he looked up at me, goes, I haven't eaten in 2 days.
Oh, yeah.
So I have no clue what you're talking about. And then I'm like, oh, my attention had been on the content, like you said, Janet, not on the student. And I needed to respond to the student, not what he was actually, doing, if that kind of makes sense. And before I get to Marita, your answer here, somebody, whoever, the snowshoe, I'm not sure exactly who that is, but saying that Janet is a legend.
Yes, she is. That's right, Ty.
And so there we go. And Marita, on your answer for the where is your attention, your response goes along with this quote, and I'll give you a chance to explain it, is to quote, help learners see the relationship between their efforts and their productivity.
Well, that one actually comes later on, the relationships, but the one that's on deck for this one, on that I think folks are seeing on the Twitter chat, says learning accelerates in times of need.
Oh,
And
did I get it backwards?
that's all right.
Oh man.
Well, don't worry. We're all about learning. We just work it out. And so what we have here is, just like Janet said, if we don't understand where our needs are, where the students' needs are, then we're going to have a hard time being able to help them when they're learning. And so the Twitter chat post that I put as an answer brings us back to Plato's 3 ways of knowing: the true, the good, and the beautiful. And so when you are listening, perhaps we can be listening to not only the learner's needs, but how are they sharing? And how are they creating? And if we are doing all 3 of those, then we're really making sure that we're supporting the whole person in all the ways that they can best learn and grow.
No, that's yeah. It's like I was saying before. It's not always about the content. It's everything else surrounding it, and oftentimes, especially right now with the virtual learning, distance learning, crisis learning, whatever we're going to call it these days, sometimes that gets forgot because it's a screen in between us, but we got to remember that there's somebody else on the other side of that screen. And like you said, learning accelerates in times of need. And I think if I have to get to wherever and there's roadblocks in the way, I got to figure it out. And get those barriers out of my way.
Right. And Tyler, I would just add on to something, a common theme that as we're reading through concerns that educators have right now, even concerns in the overall view of the public when it comes to education right now, is that everyone is behind. There's this thing that's going through the, oh no, we're all behind. And I would argue we're actually needing to pay more attention here, because I believe we have learned more in the last year as just a world, as a globe, as educators, as students. We have learned more just because we had to. Think of, if we really unpack how our day is different now than it was before COVID-19, then we would see that a lot of learning has happened. So then it's like, let's try to sort that out and give some credit for some of the work that's been done. Let's give some value to that work.
No, absolutely. And goes back to what Jeff and I were talking about on a couple episodes ago, where what about those kids that are actually doing really, really good in this situation, where they don't have to worry about getting bullied. They don't have to worry about how they're going to get to school. It's, I'm here. And, it's absolutely true, is, who knows? And we're kind of in that situation where, instead of being so negative about everything that's going on right now, let's embrace it, learn from it ourselves, and take what we've learned and move forward.
Precisely. I would agree with that.
Jana, any additional thoughts on question 1, as I see question 2 just got posted?
No, I don't have any. Sorry, I was muted. Don't have. How many times have we heard that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What the skills we've learned, right?
I was just trying to quote what Marita said in some tweets. So I think she's just right on with, you know, we know that our learners are behind as far as our own grade level standards, but what have they learned? You know, how can we
Right.
build on those things that they have learned during this time? And like you said, Tyler, there are some who are flying high. I mean, they're doing just great too. We've found their best way to learn too. So
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, here is question 2, which goes off of the E for empower. And the question is, what is learning? So what is learning? And on this one, Marita, I'm going to go ahead and show your answer. I'm just going to pull it straight off of Twitter this time. I'm not going to mess with my graphics that I messed up somehow, but that's all right.
No worries at all.
And I'll let you go ahead and read your answer here and offer a couple thoughts with it.
Thank you. Yes. So, you know, if we think about learning, to learn is something vulnerable, and it requires risk taking. And if we have courage and curiosity, those are the things that give us the strength and the will to take a risk, the will to try, the will to try to learn. What I wrote, this is a quote from the book. Learners are risk takers. They allow courage and curiosity to be louder than doubt and fear. And then I really started thinking about classroom time working with kids, even time working with some professional development. You know, there's this feeling that you have as an educator to get things done because you have something on your list and it's got to get done. And we referred to this on the earlier question. But unfortunately, while we're paying attention to trying to get that done, we can miss the fact that we may have learners in front of us that are afraid. And we may have learners in front of us that are doubting that they even have what it takes to try. And so I wonder if we did tally how many times that we can see and hear kids, learners, adult learners, whoever we serve, showing courage and curiosity, and how many times do we hear them showing doubt and fear? And if we really tallied that in a day or in a week, what column would have the most points? And I think that is something that we can start really looking at when we think about empowering, is just how are we allowing courage and curiosity to be in the learning space with us?
Sorry, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts here, because you hit like holy cow. It's not often that I'm very speechless, as you know, my students would often say, or my wife, but you know, that's okay. No, I think what you're saying, the one thing that was really sticking out to me was that acronym of FAIL, you know, the first attempt in learning.
Right.
And yeah, it's cliche and it gets overused, but it's true. And if we're not willing to take that leap, have some courage, when are we ever going to truly learn? I know for me, if in my classroom, I would always bring everything back to video games, and that's the teacher dude side of me. But I always talk about, you know, going out there and trying, and I fail. I'm not just going to turn it off and call it a day. I'm going to try again and try again. And yeah, I'm going to get ticked off, but I'm going to keep going. And for the students that, you know, are you know, doing the same thing in the classroom, they're going to take some chances. They're going to fail. It's going to happen, but they have to have that courage, and they're going to learn more and more and more from that just by having that. Janet, what are your thoughts there after you finish up that tweet right that you got going on here? And I'm going to Let's look at a couple answers while you're doing that. And Jana, go ahead and cut me off whenever. Kevin Self said that the idea is to empower our students to be successful, to engage in learning, and to advocate for themselves.
Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, so I added to Marita's tweet, and I just wonder how, we can help our students move from that fear. In fact, I used Tom Murray's acronym that he shared today. How do we, instead of, have them take that fear and make it and use courage and curiosity to face everything and rise rather than, running away. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with the R in learner that we're going to get to later, and that's that relationship. But also, I think empowering students to see, because I think I talked about, in my tweet, I talked about Alan November's question of who owns the learning.
Yes.
And so if I'm the only one in the room that's owning all the content, then students are worried about making a mistake or things like that. So when we help empower students to, set goals and then see the way to get to those goals, and it uses a lot of different, encouragement and that really feedback that propels them forward rather than pushes them back. So all those things going through my head. And Marita says it so eloquently. She really does.
Wow. Thank you. I talked about Alan November in the book because that all the people that influenced my thinking and learning, I tried to, bring them through because everyone's part of your learning journey. When you learn with someone, they're now part of your learning journey. And so with Alan November and thinking about how he explained that the students were trying to just have something dumped into them and not really out to try to go find their own and be an advocate for themselves, as what Kevin had mentioned in the Twitter chat.
Yeah. And with that, I'm going to bring Jeff on. Jeff has made it back in. Jeff, welcome.
Hi there.
Hello.
Wow, it has been a busy day. Sorry.
You're good, Jeff. You're good. And now, as I'm sitting here, before we get to our next question, you just sent me a message, and it's a video. Do you guys mind if I play it here really quick?
Oh, no.
This is from Ba. I hope you're doing good. Congrats on your book.
Oh.
Now, I'm not sure. Jeff told me about this.
Okay. Wow.
I happened to look on your Facebook page, and I saw that you had a friend that was a friend of mine too, and she happens to work at my school. So I asked her, how are you guys know each other? And then I asked her if she would be willing to record a quick message to you. So.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff. That makes my day.
So anyway.
It's the day from being speechless, Tyler.
Yes. Jeff, wow. You missed it. I was speechless earlier.
That's not possible.
Oh, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Well, with that, Jeff, we're going to put you on the spot for question 3. So are you ready for this?
No.
Okay. Good. Well, let's take a risk and step out in courage. So the question is to analyze, and who is learning? So, Jeff, in your opinion here, who is learning?
Within the classroom? This is what we're talking about within the classroom, right? So I think if you have a classroom of 20 students and one teacher, you have 21 people learning. There's every student. I tell the students beginning of the year, there are 21 teachers in here, not one. And there are 21 learners in here, not one. We can all learn from each other. We can all teach each other. Sometimes it takes being able to hear something 3, 4, 5. I think the rule is 7 different ways before you finally truly understand it. 7 different ways from 7 different perspectives before you truly understand it. So to answer that question, I'd say, who's learning? Everyone.
That's good. What are your thoughts on that, Marita?
Well, I
As I pull
definitely
this up.
second that. I second that, Jeff. I mean, if you're a human, you're learning, right? You're in constant state of learning. And so when we think about education as a whole and we think how we measure success, that's really where this analyze chapter comes in. So we've listened to the kids, we've empowered the kids. Now, how are we going to analyze that learning is actually happening? And right now we analyze that learning is happening around the content, but we have just been saying that that's really not the learning process, right? The learning has something to do with the human that's in front of you. And so as I put here, learning is the return on the investment, but how can we show learning? In the Analyze chapter, I introduced something called the job of a learner. This comes from Clay Christensen's idea of the theory of jobs. And I really started thinking, what is the job of a learner? And so the learner has their own acronym. And so that's within the book. So if the learner's doing their job and the teacher is facilitating the learning through what the learner acronym offers here, then really what we have to do is just a learning checkup so that we can make sure that we are making progress, because it's all about forward motion. And so learning checkups can help those learners have the goals and then analyze their progress. And so it's really an ongoing, like Jeff, you just said, learning is happening all the time, and wherever there's people, there's learning. And so how could we really think about education as more of a continuum of learning, much like when you go to a pediatrician and you have your child there and you're looking at trends and you're looking at from this moment to this moment over time, not this day and this age necessarily.
Hey, Tyler.
Yes, Jeff.
Could you put that quote back up again?
Yeah,
I wanted
absolutely.
to ask Marita something.
Yes.
Learning is the return on investment. Marita, would you be willing to say that that return on investment can be the smallest thing within the course of a day of being in the classroom? That learning doesn't have to be a big deal thing where it's some sort of test or even quiz, but it's some sort of small next step within the process of trying to understand a concept.
Absolutely. And when we try, but how can we honor that? When we talk about analyzing success in education, how can we honor that? I think that really gets back to us being able to be really clear as to what is the goal for that kid, and then did they make progress in that goal, right? And so with that, you can start to create a learning story, and that's your measure of success. Those are the things that help us to know that we're actually getting a return on investment.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And Janet, you say here, I think we need to step back and model being a learner, which is echoing what Jeff's saying, and help other learners find their
all learners together. But I think sometimes our students don't always see us as a learner. And so if we step back and model, this is something new for me, even bringing a student up and having them show us what they mean, and then we are learning from them and asking them questions. So model all of that, and then that little success, then like Jeff said, all those little successes lead to the big successes. And even having students help decide what that success is going to look like. Today I'm going to learn this, and this is how I know that I've learned it, even if it is just, being able to play a scale on a clarinet. I can remember that was the hardest thing for me to do when I was first learning the clarinet, just a couple of years ago in high school, and so just, modeling, setting goals, that I have some learning goals for myself. This is what I'm learning this year. This is what I'm trying to do. So all of those things.
That's right. And then adding on to what Janet, thinking about with this student, visualize what success would look like of that goal. So while the goal is being set, well, how will we know when we have reached this goal? How will we know when we're ready to make a new goal and continue growing?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And Kevin here, and Jeff he had to bow out really quick and restart his router. Kevin here says, I used to have students unwrap academic standards and then set goals for what they felt they needed to learn for the unit. So really, taking the ownership of their own learning right there is huge. And the next thing in PD that I know we're going to work on at my school as our admin team and coaching team is really defining that success criteria so that the students can take that ownership and tell us, did you meet this or not, kind of a thing. So I think that's huge. And Janet, your response right there of showing the flexibility and taking away the limitations is huge, especially using a rubric. Oftentimes, it's funny in math, we talk about how math is very 2 + 2 is 4, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So rubrics for math are kind of difficult in a way, but we know in language and reading, rubrics are everything. And so, being able to respond to that really, really helps. And it's something that I feel that some people are missing these days. Up next, we do have question 4, but before we hit question 4, I'm going to do a quick little reset. This is the Teacher Dudes, and Jeff has made it back with us. So Jeff, again, welcome again. Enjoying having you on here. And we are doing a live stream of the Idaho Education Chat. If you want to follow along on Twitter, it's using the hashtag IDEdChat. Or you can comment here on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter as well. And we have guests Janet Avery and author Marita Diffenbaugh with us. So again, thank you for joining us. And we are going to keep strolling on to question number 4, which states, how will learning continue? And I think this is a very, very good question for us today as things are hopefully getting out of the COVID world. But how will learning continue? And for this one, I am going to put Janet on the spot first.
So, when I first saw the word resources, that R stands for resources, the first place my mind went to was books, videos, paper, pencils, all of those tangible things that you think of with resources. But then as I started thinking through it, and I have kind of read the chapter too. So when I started thinking about it, it's not those tangible resources, but those internal resources that a student has. What are the things that's going to help, that helps them understand that learning continues after you finish a unit even. Learning continues even after you finish a product. Learning continues after you leave classroom. And so, it's kind of that spark, what helps them be curious about that topic, things like that. So it was a kind of a tricky thing, but that's kind of where I went with that anyway.
No, that's good. Marita?
Well, so one of the roles that I had an opportunity to learn and grow in was Instructional Technology Manager. And this is back when Google was new. Google for Education was new. We called it Google Apps for Education then. And so resources, just like Janet said, were all about, what is this thing going to do for me? What is this thing going to do for me? And where am I going to go shopping? And do I have a budget for it? And let's get the latest, greatest thing, right? And really, when I started thinking about, okay, now we're up to the R in learner, we've listened, we've empowered, we've analyzed. Now we're ready to go really thinking about what are the resources that we need to activate so that learning can continue. And so wonder, play, everyone comes with it. And then what can the teacher do? The kid, the job of the learner is to come with the wonder and the play. And sometimes, like we said, the learner is also the adults in the room. But then as the school venue, it doesn't matter if it's online or in person, what does that learning space look like? Is it allowing for wonder and play to happen? And then how are we going all the way back around with whatever we're learning? Is it tying to workplace or life skills? Is that really clear? When I'm doing this activity, this is preparing me for. I see this happen here. George Couros said something years ago that just floored me when he talked about real world, and he wrote the book Innovator's Mindset, but he talked about when we say it's a real world, that's a real world experience. That's kind of a symptom of a problem that we're having, right? What other world are we in when we have to say real world? We're all in the same real world. It doesn't matter if you're at school, at work, at home, it's all real. So let's make sure that we actually connect, and it's not just doing it to get it done for school or for credit, but really this is important. And it's so important that you're going to want to wonder about it, and you're going to want to play around with this a bit and really see if you can find some value.
Now with that, would you say that is the inquiry-based learning model?
I just think it's learning. I mean, you can't really learn without wonder and without play. If you just watch a 2-year-old, they're learning probably faster than most humans are, and just follow them around. And what is it? Oh, what does this do? Let me just try it. Oh, what does that do? And just follow them around and talk about courage, talk about curiosity and risk taking. We have to watch them because they're such powerful learners, right? And so how can we make sure, when we know in education, we've talked about that students kind of become apathetic the older they get in the grade levels. And why is that? Is it because we haven't allowed for the wonder and the play that the natural human needs when we learn?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And Jeff, I'll let you gather your thoughts because I'm going to come to you next. It goes along with that whole mindset of what education used to be, by having, your quote unquote trade schools, by having the different tracks that students are able to go on based off of their interests. And we see it in college, because, if you're going to be a medical major, then there's no reason that you're going to be taking a geology class, unless you're really interested in it, which is fantastic. But we see those tracks in college, and we're starting to see more and more these tracks coming back into the high schools and somewhat into the middle schools. And I mean, I'm lucky enough to be at a STEM elementary school, but I personally feel that we need to get back to that more and more. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on that? Which I think he's muted. Jeff is muted. The number one phrase of the past.
There we go.
However long.
I am unmuted
there we go.
now. All right. So I remember in my master's program that we talked about having students do something called wonderings, which is just posing a question that they would just wonder about, that there may not be a specific answer to. It would allow them to research and that sort of thing, but they could kind of think for themselves and come up with their own idea of what an answer to or a thought of that wondering could be. And then the other two thoughts I had is, one, I think that continuing learning, I think that's where something like the specialists, like what I do for PE or what teachers do for art or that sort of thing, that's where that can continue, is within those programs. And I wonder if this particular section deals with the transfer of learning, where you would take learning in one place and then you transfer it to something else. Maria, is that kind of where that would be?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, it kind of cut out on my internet there. But what I was hearing Jeff say was that, just this idea of continuous learning beyond and making the transfer of, hey, I learned this skill, and now how do I come over here and use that skill? When I talk to employers preparing for the school that we're getting ready to start up north, there's 3 things that they talk about is a problem. They're having a hard time finding employees that communicate, and either verbally or in writing in a way that is professional. The other thing, they have a hard time showing up and being there. And then the third thing, they have a hard time getting along with others. And so those are really human skills, and so all the things, again, how are we doing these kinds of important skills in school so that also transfers to the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. We are moving on to question number 5, which states for the N for needs. What will support learners? So again, what will support learners? And I'm curious if the what in this question here, Marita, I'm going to ask this question to you. If the what could change as well or be interchangeable to the who will support learners.
Yes, I'm going to cast a really big net, though, Tyler.
Okay.
And the big net takes us back to the conversation we started with, which is hope. And a hope is a prerequisite for learning. So when we talk about needs, that is the critical need that everyone needs to have. And what is hope? And so I unpacked hope in the book a bit and referred to Snyder's theory of hope, and it has to do with a will and a way. And so it really goes back to if we have listened, empowered, analyzed, and there's transparency to that analyzing of how the kids are doing and what the goals are, like we talked about, and we've activated the natural way that we learn, which is wonder and play and each other and feedback, all those things that happen, connecting to why this matters, right? Now we can get to, hopefully we've taken care of hope by now because we have paid attention to all those things along the way. But if we haven't, or we see a student lose hope, then we need to look a little bit deeper into what is taking that will away. Is it because they cannot see how they could find success? Is it because, they have some basic needs that need to be taken care of? You mentioned that earlier. I'm hungry. I needed breakfast, but hope is just as important as eating breakfast. It is definitely a basic need that we must have in order to learn.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Janet, do you have any thoughts on that one?
So I think mine just kind of builds on that. And a lot of times students just need to know that they can do it. And sometimes they need someone to believe they can do it before they will believe it themselves. And I think it goes back to that teacher just helping create that, helping students see that path to even get there. Here, there's that goal that you set, and here's how you can help get there, or how do you think you can get there? Asking those great questions and helping them discover the answers. But actually being confident and building up. We talk about teacher. The word just escaped me, but competency, but also efficacy. That's that word. Being efficacious, and really, really believing that I can do something. And so that's a big thing that students and teachers need.
Yeah, when I taught 5th grade for 13 years prior to becoming a technology integration coach. And Marita, I believe the student that we had the video clip of was in your 5th grade class, however many years ago that was.
Right.
And so we have that fun little 5th grade connection, which is fun. But I often I was one that would go against the grain. You always hear you need to go in and you need to read every student's file. You need to, figure out, what they did in their past 5 years of education in the school. Go talk to their fourth grade teachers, go talk to their third grade teachers. And I'm not shy to say this, but I didn't do any of that. Unless they were a student that had severe needs, as far as, maybe an IEP or something like that, which I would read the medical document, but I didn't want to have all these preconceived notions about kids because I myself, I wanted to give them that fresh start and, realize that they're still kids. And if Billy he's been a turd since kindergarten through fourth grade, and they get to my class and I had this preconceived notion that they're a turd, what's that? What good's that going to do? So I need to get to know them first. And like Janet said, and it was one of those things that I would do without even realizing it. My principals have told me this is you don't realize that you just giving him the easy question is actually what he really needed so that he could feel that self-pride, that hope that I can do this. So I'm curious, I know this is kind of going a little off kilter here, but how did you approach that kind of a situation when you were in the classroom, I guess I should say?
I think it's really studying your students to figure out what is it that is robbing their hope. What is it external? Is it internal? And so I did a lot of thinking about that as I wrote The Job of a Learner in the book, because I feel like a teacher could look at the job of a learner and with the student, look at each part of that acronym, and they would find where they're lacking and what they need. And then you triage from there and you go find the support. Maybe that's some counseling support. Maybe that is a parent conference with them in the room. Maybe it is just they need to have a break. I talked specifically about math, and one of my students who had extreme math anxiety, so much so that she would pull her hair out. And I just told her one day, it's not worth it. I used to do hair. I love hair. I don't want you to pull your hair out anymore. So just don't do math. What do you want to do while we're doing math? And I took it away from her. And she's just looked at me like, are you kidding me? And I said, you just can't do any math for this whole week, but you still need to learn something. So what are you going to do? And so she made a plan of what she'd do, and that was fine. At the end of the week, she said, I need to do math, Mrs. D. I need to do math. And I said, I don't know. I mean, are you sure? Are you really sure? And she said, I've already been doing it. And she showed me her notebook. She'd been listening to all the stations that we'd been doing, and she'd been learning. So something was blocking. I don't really know what it was. It could have been a lot of experiences in the past. It could be that she's just a harsh learner on herself. If she wasn't getting it right the first time, that goes back. She wasn't feeling courage. She felt like she wasn't safe to fail for some reason, but that was an internal thing happening. And when I took that away, the external thing, all of a sudden she wanted to learn math. And we found a way that she could do it enjoyably, which actually had to do a lot with art.
Yeah, it's finding that quick little niche with the kid, and not in a bad way, but you exploit it, and it works.
It does.
I do it with my own son, so I get it completely. With that, we have 2 questions left, and Jeff is coming back at some point, I hope. He's having some computer issues, and dare I say, this is where I put my plug in that, Apple is the way to go. But that's just me. What do I know? But the question here, well, it kind of goes with Apple, right? But experiences, what is valuable to learners? So what is valuable to learners? And with this one, Marita, your answer for this, I'm going to get on the screen. There we go. You said that a A learner expects the oops, provides responsive and actionable feedback, and encourages students through connections and innovation. So why don't you take a second and kind of walk us through what you were thinking there?
Absolutely. So we just kind of ended the last question thinking about failure and a fear of failure. And so if part of the learning job is that we will fail, that is actually if you already know it, you probably aren't learning something new, right? So being ready for the oops, being ready for the mistake, and then how do you recover from that? How do you continue growing from that without getting stuck? And then that goes along with providing responsive and actionable feedback. So that really helps the student figure out where do I need to, what do I need to change? What do I need to do differently? And you give them that really specific feedback so they could get the next win, so they could take the next move. It's much like coaching, right? If you think about coaching and they watch video together of the actual play, and then they unpack it bit by bit. Oh, see, when you did this, instead of this, I wonder if this would help. Or do you see something that should be changing right now? Or, all of a sudden this becomes really reflective. And then the last thing is, why does it even matter? Again, those experiences need to connect to something that is exciting to the students. I talk in the book and I highlight Commander Chris Hadfield, because when I was teaching 5th grade, he was in the International Space Station and he was tweeting out and he was putting videos out there, and the kids just loved it so much. We just kept going with it. I just always kept trying to find another connection back to the work that Commander Hadfield was sharing out for the public to learn from. And I was in the back end filling all the standards. On the front end, they thought they were just learning about the next thing that Commander Chris Hadfield was doing, right? And so we were doing some amazing learning together and kind of co-designing that learning experience. Your interest, your curiosity. Okay, well, we have to have these have-to standards. Let's do the matchmaking between the two, and we're going to have a great time.
No, that is awesome. Just making that connection between them is something that learners need. They want to make that connection. And with this weekend being Super Bowl Sunday, one thing that I've done for the past 13, 14 years is I would take our math standards and I would apply the football statistics to it, and asking them, if Tom Brady threw X amount of passes and he got this many yards, how many is that per pass? And hitting those 5th grade standards. And I'm kind of bummed that I don't get to do that this year. So I'm going to have to just create my slide deck anyway and put it out there for people if they want it, have fun, kind of a thing. And I like to point out how many interceptions Tom Brady had, and, as if that's okay, but yeah. So, but with it, I think it's very important. And Janet, you kind of went a different direction with your answer, which is awesome. You said here, one thing valuable to learners is feedback that will propel them forward. So take a second here and kind of explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so when I was thinking of this, things that are valuable to our learners is I'm thinking back to clarity too, because our learners need to know what is it that I'm going to learn? How am I going to know that I'm learning it? How am I doing? And what are my next steps? And so we want students to have that curiosity and things like that, but we also want to give them the feedback that's going to help fuel that curiosity and help them move forward. And so that feedback is what does that, and that specific feedback, this is great. I wonder what would happen if you did this, I wonder what would happen if it substituted this for this, and so just gave that feedback and asking really rich questions, and then also helping them do that with each other, Because when kids, that's the other beauty of empowering kids, is when they can help each other ask those questions and ask those, again, those what if we did this. I think that'll prepare them, especially if you're doing a project. What is, I always think of the video Austin's Butterfly, where you're giving feedback and being a critical friend, and it's not being critical, but it's helping someone become the best version of themselves. So that's where that comes from. I'm going to get out of the screen because my Mac's about to die, so I just need to grab my power cord.
All right. Well, we will switch back to this view here. And, she brings up a really good point of feedback, because if the student's not getting feedback, it's almost like they feel the why am I doing this
Right.
kind of thing.
Well, and Tyler, the feedback that we have traditionally given students come through a report card or come through things like that. Those are kind of a formal feedback. But the feedback that Janet was referring to there, I believe, was a two-way communication kind of feedback, that actionable, responsive feedback where, okay, so now what? So here's the situation. Here are the facts in front of us. And now what? And then taking it a step further to say, and when you do the next step, how can you help others? How can you connect others into this? And so it really goes, I give myself 3 questions every day to see how the day went. And I think that this goes back to true, good, and beautiful. It's like, did I learn something today? Have I helped someone today? And was I able to use my unique skills and talents to offer something, to contribute, right? That's the true, the good, and the beautiful right there. And to me, that's the kind of feedback that learners need in order to feel brave to continue learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the giving the feedback goes along wholeheartedly with question 7 here, which is relationships. And I've said it before, the 3 most important things in education are relationships, and relationships. And with that, it says, how will I connect with learners? And I know for myself on this one, I'm going to do everything I can to get to know that kid. I mentioned that earlier with not reading the file, with not talking to their previous teachers, because I want to get to know the kid for who they are and get to know what really makes them tick. And it's amazing. One of my friends, Jeff Charbonneau, who was National Teacher of the Year in 2013, that was also his big mantra, is relationships. Get to know the kid first. The rest comes later.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so true with it. And Marita, on your answer here, you're saying thank you for being difference makers in the lives of your students. So I'm going to give you a second here, let you get on your soapbox and kind of give us a good little raw here on this last question.
Absolutely. Well, as educators, that's what you signed up for, is to be a difference maker in the lives of someone else. When I just saw my student from years ago pop on, it took my breath away, because I've connected with my students and they matter to me. Their future matters to me. I'm grateful for the time that I've had to learn with them and to inspire their learning. And so just thinking about, that's why I became a teacher. I love learning myself, and I love being there with someone to help them reach and develop their full potential. And so I think that, being a difference maker should just be another title under every single educator's name, right? There's that piece. But if you really, the acronym of L.E.A.R.N.E.R, I have relationships at the end, but the reality is you've been building relationships through the whole thing. You started building the relationship the minute you listened. And so it really tied it all up to say, look, this is, to your point, this is what it's all about. It's about relationship with each other. It's about relationship with the content and why it's important for your future. It's about the relationship of learning and how that learning can continue. And I think as teachers, it's also about the relationship with myself and how I'm taking care of myself. And so a piece of that chapter talks a lot about learner self-care. And that has to do with all of us. You know, how are we taking care of ourselves so that we don't lose hope, so that we want to keep learning, and that we want to keep taking those beautiful risks that we take every day.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And, you know, we do need to take care of ourselves. And it's odd in this past 1 year that we've had since all of this really started. Um, you know, Janet, it was pretty much a year ago today, if not a year ago tomorrow, where you and I first met in person. When I remember sitting in the back of that classroom, walking up, and like, hey, are you Janet? And, you know, making that quick little connection. And because we've been tweeting back and forth, but, you know, it is that relationship that it doesn't, you know, looking back, it doesn't necessarily have to start in the physical world, but, you know, starting in this virtual world. And little do we know, a month later, on that Black Friday, that March 13th, that everything just blew up, and here we go. We're all in that virtual land. So with that, I'll let you answer this last question before we kind of wrap things up. But how will you connect with the learners?
So again, it's kind of funny because you talked about learning what, trying to figure out what makes your students tick. And that's exactly what I put in my answer was, one of my new favorite videos is called Be a Mr. Jensen. And it's a video about, actually he's a famous drummer. I can't remember what band he plays in now, but it was because he started drumming because a teacher saw something in him. He just couldn't sit still all the time. And that was always getting him in trouble. And instead of keeping him and getting him in trouble after class and telling him to sit still, he handed him a pair of drumsticks. And those drumsticks changed everything because it made him realize that he could use those drumsticks and do other things, and that was part of his learning and having that movement, and it was okay. And of course, I think that spoke to me because I have a drummer. My son is a drummer, and so that really spoke to me, and learning what makes him tick. He's a different learner than my daughter was, and so to have, I look at our two children and how different they are, and just knowing and trying to keep figuring that out, is what's going to make a difference in the lives of students. And also knowing that if you can't find a way to connect with them, finding someone else that can connect with them, and putting yourself aside and being okay with someone else making that connection too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's huge, is finding that connection, regardless of where it comes from. Finding the connection is what matters, and getting to that student, hitting them, right here where it's going to be, where all these years later you get a fun little quick video, which you never would have expected to get. And that right there, seeing the look, Marita, on your face when you saw that, and it's like boom, right there. I'm gonna have to get that clip. I'll send you the clip. But all that stuff, it's like that's what this is. What this is
all
for.
about that moment. It's all
Yep.
about that connection. Yeah.
It is. And with that, again, thank you all for joining us tonight. This has been a blast. I've learned a lot about L.E.A.R.N.E.R, and I can't wait to get a chance to read the book. So with that, where can we get your book? Where can we find it? All that fun stuff.
So the easy way just is type in connectedd.org, and that'll get you to the publisher, but you could also just go to Amazon. I'll put the link in there. Just type in L.E.A.R.N.E.R and Diffenbaugh, and it will pop up. And it just released, my Jimmy and Jeff just put out the Kindle version. So if people are wanting to read it that way, there's the Kindle version, and then there's the actual book. So I'm excited to send that, and thank you for the time to share. And it's really my hope that this book is something that elevates people and helps them realize that the work that they're doing is very valuable, and they have all the ingredients they need to find success.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to look that up. I am a digital person myself, so with it being on Kindle, I can still get that on my iPad, so that's good. We're good there. I'm excited to read it. Learning myself is something I do. My grandpa, who passed away last year, good grief, it's been a year. He always told me, he goes, if you're not learning, you're dying. And I knew that to be true because the very last time I saw him, he told me the things that he was still learning in his age. So, I'm with you there. Janet, any closing thoughts?
Well, so if you want to learn more about L.E.A.R.N.E.R, we are going to do a book study of it. So we're going to start that in March, and we'll go chapter by chapter because we really just scratched the surface in this introduction tonight. And so I think that it'll be exciting. We'll start that the first week in March. The next 3 weeks in February, we'll probably do some EdCamp style Twitter chats, unless we have some folks who have a specific topic they want to cover. But we'll look forward to that book study on the horizon.
Awesome. Well, again, you can catch Janet on Twitter at Avery Teach, Marita on Twitter at M Diffenbaugh. Catch me on Twitter at Keith67, and you can catch Jeff on Twitter. Well, no, you can't. He's silent like he is now, but that is all right. But again, thank you all. We appreciate it, and have a great rest of your night. If you'd like to join us live and interact in future shows, or to be a guest on the show, be sure to follow Tyler Keefe on Twitter at Keefe67 and like the Teacher Dudes on Facebook. If you haven't already subscribed to the Teacher Dudes, hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening to, and be sure to also leave us a rating.